You guys know me. I'm a big net neutrality is a huge theme on this show. And net neutrality is the policy that assures that all internet traffic is treated equal. That if you, whether you go to this show or the Convo Couch, or you go to Fox News or CNN, it loads the same way. It's treated with the same treatment of traffic. You can't prioritize traffic. You can't throttle different websites. You can't price gouge different entities. Well, in a post-net neutrality world, that has all gone away. And now they're trying to see what they can get away with in a post-net neutrality world. Charter seeks FCC nod to charge video streamers. What's going on here? The telecom giant says the online video market is flourishing, and there's no reason to hold it back from negotiating interconnection agreements with some of the world's largest companies. Charter Communications wants permission to begin charging Netflix, HBO Max, Disney Plus, and other streamers for the pleasure of efficiently carrying its traffic. In a petition this past week to the Federal Communications Commission, the nation's second largest provider of cable and TV and internet services cited the flourishing online video marketplace and asked for a sunset of two notable conditions imposed on Charter's 2016 merger with Time Warner and Bright House Networks. Back then, the Obama-era FCC was crafting net neutrality rules. Now, without net neutrality rules, they can do this stuff. So why is this an issue? First of all, they don't need to do this. Like this whole thing that like, well, Netflix is taking up so much traffic. They need to be charged more. No, this is just price gouging. How do I know this? Because whenever a city builds their own internet infrastructure, they are able to offer a service better than what the cable company offers pretty much 100% of the time. And the only time there's an exception to that, it's because their project's not finished. That's the only time. And when they're not finished building their municipal broadband project, they're neck and neck with the cable companies. When they're finished, it's infinitely better. Oh, and by the way, it's cheaper too. So all this data caps, data caps are complete nonsense. That's just something that these cable companies made up to price gouge more. That's why when AT&T was like, oh, amidst the pandemic, we're going to help you. We're going to lift your data cap. They were just like basically it's just like, oh, it'd be like you go to a restaurant and they're like, hey, remember how we were giving you that surcharge for air? And we were limiting the amount of air you were allowed. We lifted that. And now there's no charge for air. You're welcome. The food is still grossly overpriced and of a shittier quality than what we're capable of, but no air surcharge. We care about you. And this is just another, for instance, they're going to try to get more money out of these companies. And you might be thinking, well, gee, Netflix can afford it, Ron. What's the problem? No, the problem is this is where, quote unquote, trickle down actually works. And this is where, you try to get more money out of these companies, Netflix, YouTube, they're just going to reinvent their business model. And who's going to suffer? Content creators like us, independent media on the internet. And the internet, as we know it, is going to look like cable television. And yes, that is possible.
Ron, you're the expert in this net neutrality stuff. So it never really passed. It never passed, right? Net neutrality never passed. So they are able to throttle internet speeds.
So what happened was we've had assumed net neutrality since the advent of the internet. Like there was like a clause where it's like, yeah, net neutrality, that's a thing. But it wasn't solidified on the books via FCC law. It was just something that we assumed everyone followed because it made sense for the internet to flourish. You would follow something like that. So we've always had net neutrality. And then what happened was the cable companies eventually realized, oh, we don't actually have to follow this. Digital rights activists have been pleading with the FCC for years to get this on the books, and screw them all. We don't have to follow this. So they took it to court, and it was Verizon and a couple other companies that basically said, we don't want to follow FCC laws. And the court ruled in their favor, saying, yeah, you basically don't have to follow FCC laws. But if the FCC, wink, wink, nudge, nudge FCC, if you designate the internet a utility, which it is a utility in our lives, imagine going through this pandemic, especially without the internet. What would people do? Not just for entertainment purposes, but for information purposes and going about your daily life. You'd be screwed. So if the FCC designated the internet a Title II, then we could get net neutrality cemented on the books into law. And Tom Wheeler and the FCC didn't want to do that. But the public pressure was so much, that they had to. And I mean, there were so many comments. They crashed the FCC's website. This was like 2014, 2015. Obama at the 11th hour was like, yeah, we should have net neutrality. So they got it on the books. So we got net neutrality cemented into law. Now, again, we've never not had net neutrality. This whole argument, when people say, well, we only had net neutrality for 2 years, the internet hasn't really changed. No, we've always had net neutrality. We just got it cemented into law in 2015 so that we could preserve it. And Trump's FCC, one of the first things they did was dismantle net neutrality. So now without it, you're seeing this kind of thing happen. You're seeing all these mergers between cable companies and content providers. Why are they doing that? They're doing that because they're planning for a future where they dominate the internet, where HBO Max and Disney Plus dominates the internet because everybody else, their video doesn't load anymore because they don't need to follow net neutrality anymore. So unless YouTubers like us can pay these exorbitant fees that Disney Plus can afford and Netflix can afford, we're screwed. We're going to become the low power FM of the internet, meaning like we're not really going to be broadcast and no one's going to be able to get to our content. That's the world they're preparing for. It's a plausible thing. It's very possible. You know, I talk about these issues a lot. Not many people do, but I will take no joy if there is an I told you so moment down the road. And we're telling the generation after us and the generation after us what the internet used to be like. And they're like, really? You mean anyone could just have a show? Yeah. Anyone could just put content out there? Yeah. And it would load the same as Disney and all these. Yeah. Wow, that's crazy. It'll be a thing of the past.
So how do we stop that?
You buy ice cream for Nancy Pelosi. You No, there's the good news, Johnny, is there's a number of ways we can fight back, and we're currently fighting back. First of all, there's a multiple approach, and I think every approach is important. First of all, we got to fight for net neutrality at the state level. Here in California, there's a good net neutrality bill that Jerry Brown did sign before he left office that's moving forward. Because of this, the cable companies, their hands are kind of tied as far as what they can do, as far as what they offer consumers in a post-net neutrality world. Because guess what? New York's working on a big net neutrality bill too. If California and New York get it, that's like almost half the customer base in the country. So you're not really going to be able to unroll anti-net neutrality policies if in two juggernaut states you have to uphold net neutrality. So that's some good news. So we got to fight for net neutrality on the state and municipal levels. The other big thing that ends this battle once and for all, building our internet in the cities. This is why I'm a proponent for municipal broadband. This is why I've been showing up to city halls and municipal broadband. You can also refer to it as city-owned internet. It basically means the internet isn't provided to you by some organized duopoly, which, by the way, that's what the cable companies did. They organized a duopoly. That's why our internet is more expensive and shittier than a lot of other places in the world. It's not because we don't have the capability. It's because profit comes first, so they're going to screw you and price gouge you. But when the city builds their own internet, guess what? Everybody from the poorest resident to the mayor and everyone in between wants their porn to load great. So they're going to make sure you get quality frickin' internet. And whenever this is unrolled, again, there was a study that Harvard did along with the Institute of Local Self-Reliance, which is a big proponent for municipal broadband. They help build municipal broadband all across the country. I've collaborated with them on some ideas. I hope to more in the future. They have revealed that city internet is better, faster, and cheaper pretty much 100% of the time. And again, the only time where it's like just as good, it's always cheaper. It's cheaper 100% of the time. Sometimes it's just as good as what the big cable company offers you. And the only time it's even just as good is because it's not finished yet. They're still building it.
Right.
So that's what needs to happen. And that's the only way to end this once and for all. It's kind of like the way I like to look at it. Fighting for good net neutrality policy is holding the front line and making sure they can't dig deeper into a post-net neutrality internet. And then building city-owned internet all across the country, that's ending the war once and for all, because it's taking the internet out of big cable's hands, putting it into the cities where net neutrality will be written into the charter. And guess what? The internet as we know it is going to stay the way it is.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So no Google Fiber, municipal internet.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, yeah, because it's one of those things. These big companies, and this is one of those issues where we have unlikely allies because Netflix is pro net neutrality. Google is pro net neutrality. Facebook is pro net neutrality. They're not pro net neutrality for the same reasons I'm pro net neutrality or independent content creators are pro net neutrality. Which if you're a content creator on YouTube and you're not for net neutrality, I'm not sure what planet you're on, but nonetheless, it's like we have these unlikely allies. The problem is once they don't have a business incentive to have net neutrality, because again, Google net neutrality helps business for Google. Net neutrality helps business for Facebook. Net neutrality helps Netflix. If it goes away, which they'll just adapt, then they're not going to be for net neutrality anymore. They're not for net neutrality because they want a free and open internet and they want democracy on the internet. They're for net neutrality because, well, this kind of helps us just do our thing.
Avoid headaches in the future, right?
This avoids headaches.
Where they have to invent ways to go around it. I got you.
Yes,
I got you.
This avoids headaches for them. It doesn't help make them bigger. It doesn't help them, it just helps them continue doing what they're doing. Why would they want a disruption in the flow of things? So, once the FCC, like an anti-net neutrality FCC, and once, some of these other cable companies find a way to cooperate with them, which again, that's why they're merging. They're merging for that very reason. And it's totally plausible. We could see a Netflix merge with a cable company or something like that. And then all of a sudden they're just like, hey, don't worry about those fees because we're partners now. Well, guess what's going to happen?
Yeah, it's ridiculous that we only have here in Pasadena, we only got AT&T and Spectrum.
Yeah.
To choose from, and they're both shitty. And
Johnny, I'm glad we could go through this together because, I really want to make everybody as miserable about this issue as I am. I really want everybody to be as angry about it and as pissed off about it and to kind of see the significance of it. So here we are.
Important. Thank you for doing that because I know you were pushing for municipal internet. I didn't know it was because that helps net neutrality. Okay.
Well, a lot of people make it out like they're two separate things, and they're not. I mean, they're really not. I mean, both are very important. I mean, net neutrality policy is very important, but so is just getting the internet out of big cable's hands. It's kind of like, I'll use the war analogy just out of lack of thinking of a better analogy off the top of my head, but it's kind of like, the cable companies and the anti-net neutrality landscape, they're intruders and they're shooting bows and arrows at us. Net neutrality is like the shield that protects us from getting hit by those arrows. And then municipal broadband is like the catapult that's going to blow these motherfuckers up.
Or save the internet. It takes their arrows away, right? It takes their supply away.
It's the weapon away. That takes their weaponry away.
Exactly.
And defeats the agenda of taking the internet from us. Get your news on with Ron. Don't you want to know what's going on? We're getting our news on today. Get your news on with Ron. Don't you want to know what's going on? We're getting our news on today. You can tweet me an article at Ron Placone. We'll go through it together and make it our own. Get your news